I hate to start the video off on a negative note, but out of all the modded Slay the Spire characters I've played, none of them have made me quite as miserable as Thorton has. Thorton is a character made by Vex, and he is described as a challenge character, as if the game isn't challenging enough already. The Steam Workshop description also states the following: anyone who can win Ascension 20 with Thorton deserves some serious props. Well, I decided that not only did I want those serious props, but I wanted to take it a step further. I'd defeat the Corrupt Heart on Ascension 20. I use either the Ascension Unlocker mod or save file editing to unlock Ascension 20 for every character I play, because that's just how I roll. So I jumped straight into the Thorton grind. And after 20 hours of grueling torture, I am proud to announce that I have completed A20H on Thorton a whopping 3 times. That may not seem like a lot to the average person, but I genuinely, unironically think that there's a high probability that I have the world record for most A20H Thorton wins. It was a truly miserable journey, and I don't recommend anyone try to do it if you care about your mental health even vaguely, but if you for some reason want to beat A20H on Thorton, I'll give you a guide with some tips straight from a Thorton pro. For this entire video, I'm going to be jumping around a lot in terms of order of operations, so bear with me. As usual, when starting a run, the first thing you should do is look at your map and try to figure out your pathing. Typically, you'd want to start out with a few normal combats, then maybe an event, then a rest site or elite. Let me show you what happens when you try to do that on Thorton. Thorton gets annihilated in normal combats, even in the easy pool. The reason why is because Thorton is a pathetic man. Not only are a lot of his common cards just worse versions of base game cards, but so are most of his basic cards. Slay the Spire is a very finely tuned game in terms of balancing, and you really feel that when you take away power from your already weak strikes and defense. Thorton does have 2 other starter cards, one of which is Heckle. Heckle is the only reason you stand even a sliver of a chance in most early and mid-game fights, as it can amplify your awful offense and defense into slightly less awful offense and defense. The upgrade is fantastic as well, one of the best upgrades in this entire kit, honestly, so get that upgraded quick. The other unique starter card is Credit Card. It gives you a very small amount of gold and can be upgraded any number of times. That secondary gimmick should be ignored entirely at rest sites. As Thorton, you cannot afford to upgrade a card that does nothing in the fight you are currently in. However, you should never remove this card from your deck. It's actually one of your possible outs throughout the run. More on that later. Anyway, all that is to say Thorton performs horribly in normal combats. Back to the Neow choice. Let's just assume that you have the base 2 options of Neow's Lament or increased max HP. The correct answer is always Neow's Lament. Once you have selected your choice, look at the map. You want to go for as many event nodes as possible, ideally leading to an elite snipe. There are several reasons why you want to farm events. 1. As I mentioned, normal combats are dreadful. 2. Several events allow you to remove a card, so you can remove the normality that you start with. Did I mention that you start with a normality? I don't think I did. Yeah, this character sucks. 3. Several events allow you to upgrade cards, so you can upgrade Heckle and stand a chance in fights you would otherwise get clobbered in. 4. There is one event that can appear as early as Act 1, which is one of your win conditions. That being the Ominous Forge event. When you get this event, never, and I mean never, upgrade a card. Always pick the Warped Tongs option. Warped Tongs might be your salvation. You can see the exact moment in this clip where I realized this, and my jaw dropped to the floor, and my mind was blown. Warped Tongs can upgrade Credit Card an unlimited number of times. Credit Card's upgrades add more gold every time, so each upgrade is better than the last. Theoretically, if you can stall a fight long enough against an enemy that doesn't scale, you can gain unlimited gold. Combine that with, say, the Courier Relic, and you can purchase most of the game's relics in a single merchant visit. Now, Thorton's defensive cards are very weak, as to be expected from Thorton, but there are some cards that are premium for stalling. Hopefully that makes sense and explains to you why you should never remove Credit Card. Anyway, you want to farm events hard, following the reasons I outlined earlier. preferably heading towards an elite fight. There are several reasons you want to fight elites, such as the typical reasons like relics and increased gold. But for Thorton specifically, you want to fight elites for the increased chance of finding rare cards. Thorton's card pool is hilariously bad, with the exception of his rare cards, which, unironically, contains some of the most powerful cards I've ever seen. And besides, Thorton's starter relic makes elite fights slightly more tolerable. Okay, so let's assume that you were able to snipe an elite with 1 HP thanks to Neow's Lament, and let's also assume that your rewards were bad. Does this mean you should restart the run, preferably using the quick restart mod that you hopefully installed before starting your Thorton grind? Not necessarily. I would encourage you to at least try to defeat the first boss, as the boss guarantees 3 rare cards and a boss relic, 3 of which are especially powerful on this character, being Snecko Eye, Runic Pyramid, and a Thorton exclusive relic named Bottled Funds. Zooming out a bit, let's recap, because I know I just threw a lot of information at you. Basically, your overall goals for Act 1 are as follows. Farm question marks, farm as many elites as you can handle, avoid normal combats, and try to at least beat the Act 1 boss, because you are almost definitely dead without at least one of Thorton's powerful rare cards. Now I'll talk about what you should do throughout the run starting in Act 1 from a micro perspective. As dreadful as normal combats are as Thorton, you will eventually need to face them, so you'll need to take some subpar cards to deal with them. Thorton does have a few decently strong cards that exhaust, so I'd recommend picking those up, but you'll need more consistent options. Just looking at the common and uncommon pools, I would recommend Book Bash, Take Accounts, Boardroom Blast, Crash, Buzzwords, and Last Ditch Effort for damage. For defensive options, Thorton truly doesn't have many options, but Call In and Sheet Shred are premium. Sheet Shred in particular is a hard carry in the early and mid game, as it offers very consistent block and passive damage that stacks the more you can play it. Also, don't underestimate Thick Skin. That power is extremely strong in any situation where you are taking consistent chip damage as opposed to large singular hits. As for some miscellaneous common and uncommon cards to look out for, you should always pick up Pocket Change because it's draw neutral and basically always good. Ghost is fantastic damage, but the fact that it disguises as another card can ruin your turn-to-turn plans and get you killed, so be aware of that risk if you pick the card up. Hindsight is a surprisingly good card as well, just for the fact that it can let you get back Heckle into your hand for some prolonged defensive and offensive boosts. Now let's talk about the run keyword. Thorton can win any non-boss combat by triggering the run keyword a certain amount of times, so you'd think that picking run cards is a no-brainer. But the threshold for running gets higher every time you trigger it, so adding too many run cards will lead to dead draws later on. Still, I think it can absolutely be worth adding some run cards early on, just to escape elite fights or deal massive damage to the Act 1 boss if you don't have anything else. The 2 best run cards are Crash, as well as Dodge and Roll and Run, because they are great cards in their own right even without the run keyword. The bottom line is that you need to win early combats to start snowballing power, so taking run cards is necessary at times. Thorton can gain relics by playing business cards and or investments enough times, but let's take a look at both of those, starting with business cards. I would never pick business cards if they don't come with upgrades. As Thorton, you absolutely cannot afford to pick cards that don't have some sort of positive or at least immediate neutral effect. As for investments, forget about them entirely. Way too expensive both in terms of draw and energy, and once again they don't have any immediate effect even when upgraded. I talked for a while about general tips as well as the common and uncommon pools, so let's take a look at the rare card pool, which is how you will likely actually win your Thorton run. I'll start at the absolute top, cards you should always pick without exception. Administrative Actions and Sell Short are my picks for best Thorton cards, which is ironic considering their best purpose is to get cards of other colors into your deck. Shout out to Golden Petal as well. These cards are also why you should try to get Snecko Eye or Runic Pyramid when you can, as these are very expensive cards that are best when drawn near each other for maximum deck manipulation. Though it's not a rare card, you should pair these two with Seeing Double for some hilarious game-breaking action. Additionally, Demotion can allow you to stall indefinitely, especially in Act 2 where many enemies rely on buffs to scale. It's not a card you should always take, but while we are on the topic of Demotion, A fantastic combo is with a Wailing Run, as it can be paired with Demotion as a way to repeatedly lower the enemy's strength permanently. My first Thorton win relied on administrative actions and Sell Short to get several of the most powerful cards in the game into my deck, such as multiple copies of Omniscience and Meteor Strike. Then I used those cards to very quickly get a Barricade/Entrench/Body Slam build into play, oftentimes on turn 1. There are hundreds of cards in Slay the Spire, and picking the absolute best ones to add to your deck can be tough. There's probably an optimal order in which to add cards to your deck, but unfortunately, I'm not clever enough to figure that out. So I'll just offer some general suggestions split into two categories: Wins the Fight and Wins the Run. Wins the Fight is a bunch of cards that you might not want to add to your deck, but will help you out in your current encounter, so you can get to a more stallable fight and get to your next category, Wins the Run. There are so many cards that you can add to your deck here, but here are just a few of my top recommendations. For enhancing your deck manipulation possibilities, Nightmare is a great pick for getting a game-breaking deck in play as soon as possible. Exhume lets you get any of the powerful Thorton cards that exhaust out of the exhaust pile, and Burst is generally fantastic too for the same reasons as Nightmare. Master Reality is easy to overlook, but it lets you get upgraded cards into your deck when paired with Nightmare or administrative actions. If you have the pieces of the deck together, but are struggling for the energy to make it work, Corruption is highly worth considering as most of the game-breaking cards are skills. You might be tempted to put Wish into your deck as well, so you can get potentially infinite plated armor or gold. Do not add Wish into your deck. Instead, add one of the colorless cards that Wish presents as options. They don't have costs, so you can always play them, which is a huge advantage. Again, there's hundreds of cards, and I've only suggested a few, but you can get really, really creative with your options. I've kept it relatively short, because the video is already getting quite long. There is one more card that I haven't mentioned, though, that you should absolutely consider. It's something you probably wouldn't think of, but Armaments is one of the best picks. Remember Thorton's credit card that you can upgrade an unlimited number of times? Armaments is one of the best ways to utilize that. Armaments can lead to unlimited gold pretty easily. I had that combo against a champ that couldn't scale thanks to Demotion, but unfortunately I had bronze scales, so whenever he attacked me, he whittled himself down. So I couldn't stall forever, and I was only able to get a measly 320 gold from that encounter. That's still a lot of gold, so I planned on spending that in the following act. But unfortunately, in a following fight, one of Thorton's relics automatically played a card that ends your turn, which made me skip turn 1, and then I died. If that doesn't sum up the Thorton experience, I don't know what does. Also, going back to the Neow choice, if you have 4 options, consider picking a rare card, or boss swap to look for one of the high rolls. One more thing. Throughout this video, you've probably noticed that Thorton has a lot of cards that give gold. Therefore, if you were able to get your hands on the Bloody Idol relic, it could give you an incredible amount of sustainability. Well, about that. One more thing. You've probably also noticed that Thorton has a lot of cards that exhaust. Therefore, it would be a good idea to try to get the Dead Branch relic for more card options during fights. Well, about that. One more thing. Just kidding, that's it. Hopefully this video will help you in your A20H Thorton journey, which you hopefully won't embark on. Goodbye.